After a fair deal of controversy over its complicated production, this sci-fi fantasy superhero film was released stateside in June of 1981, where it eventually doubles its $54 million budget, making it the third highest grossing film of that year. Taking over for Richard Donner more than halfway through the project, director Richard Lester does his best to assemble the disjointed pieces of an almost unsalvageable project, ultimately resulting in a drawn-out, poorly paced 127-minute adventure. In an effort to save Paris from a hydrogen bomb, Superman unwittingly unleashes a trio of bad guys from their floating space prison, while also dealing with his own personal issues. Almost all of the original's cast returns here, with Christopher Reeve once again donning the bright red cape and looking as handsome and formidable as ever. Having already dealt with the famous origin story, this PG-rated sequel is able to focus on the title character's relationship with Margot Kidder and a delicate and flirtatious performance. This intriguing romantic subplot that intercuts the larger action set pieces is a great anchor for a film that often becomes a bit too ambitious for its own good.
Somebody help!
There you go.
Again!
No, I'm sorry. Only one ride to a customer.
Although mostly absent for the middle hour of the picture, Gene Hackman returns, and thanks to Donner's original directing, his charisma and determination consistently steal the scene. Terence Stamp expertly portrays the power-hungry and unstoppable superhero nemesis, hell-bent on ruling the planet, and referring to himself in the third person. Ultimately, he's a fairly one-dimensional villain, who seems content with smashing stuff and terrorizing Midwestern civilians for no real reason. Some conflict is introduced when Reeves volunteers to become a powerless mortal, just as Stamp is taking over the White House. But there's absolutely zero tension derived here, as the plot device is almost immediately abandoned, and Superman restores his powers in the very next scene without any consequence or issue. It is a patently absurd mechanism, a gigantic waste of time, and awful scriptwriting. Why the thread remained in the finished film is beyond me. The climactic fight between the superhero men of Kyrpton is big on effects and exploding cars, but plays out like a silly cartoon, with the people of Metropolis worrying over their spilled ice cream rather than the mindless death and destruction around them. When Stamp remarks on Superman's only perceivable weakness, he actually cares for these Earth people, you'd think our hero would be faced with some human dilemma, but instead more things blow up and he's never really challenged. Although John Williams was too busy with far better films in 1980, composer Ken Thorne does a serviceable job weaving his iconic themes into some new material. Over 30 years old, the visual effects may not hold up very well, but they're at least forgivable. The silly tone and goofy dialogue that undercut many scenes, however, aren't. With two separate directors, two cinematographers, and many reshoots taking place almost 3 years later, it's amazing anything cohesive resulted at all. But surprisingly, a fair number of the shots are well lit, powerfully framed, and aesthetically pleasing. Dismissing the ridiculousness of flying men in capes burning things with their laser vision, a number of developments and scenarios in this picture are still a bit far-fetched and unbelievable. Not the least of which is Hackman traveling to the North Pole on a water-floating jet ski. Through all the mess, there's a lot of fun comic book style action here, and plenty of amusing moments. But the takeaway lesson is a foggy one, which seems to suggest that Reeves was correct to value service over love and personal ambition. It's hardly anything special, but this movie did produce two separate direct sequels, so it's necessary viewing for fans of the iconic franchise. Fortunately, an alternate cut released years later is a large improvement, and is likely the version I'll rewatch going forward. Superman 2, corny and jumbled, but entertaining. Here's what you had to say in the YouTube comments. Here's our scores for Superman 2, a great and a good. Everyone agreed this follow-up was superior to its predecessor, with several of you praising the villains and tighter script. You gave it an 8. I was disappointed in this picture. It had lots of flash and fun, but the production issues really hurt an otherwise capable movie. I'm scoring it a 6.